everyone, I'm Lucy. This is my colleague Simon. We are both on the data team at Let's Do This, and today we're going to present to you the State of the Union. That sounds very official, so to put it in simple terms, we're going to present stuff that we're both big nerds about, which is a lot of charts and numbers, and they can present some really interesting insights on the industry. So to give a bit of background on why we feel qualified to present this to you today, I thought I'd give a bit of context on the data we have. Let's Do This, since its inception, has taken over 3 million entries to races. Obviously, these entries contain a ton of juicy data about what people like to participate in, their demographic profile, etc. These 3 million entries have been across 2 countries, the UK and the US, and we're trying to give data that is relevant to both those geographies today. And finally, where possible, we want to pair our quantitative insights with qualitative data. And that's thanks to our friends at Massive. Massive, who some of you may not be familiar with, is an event services company. Each year, they produce an amazing survey called the Mass Participation Pulse Survey. And essentially what it does is survey thousands of participants, and it takes a pulse check on how they're feeling about participating. So let's start off with something to celebrate. People are participating more than they were in 2019. In fact, there are 15% more participants on start lines than there were in 2019. Coming out of COVID, we had this weird mix in 2021 and 2022 of a combination of virtual and in-person events, but now those days are well and truly behind us, and that's something we should be really excited about. So for the rest of this presentation, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about 2 quite exciting demographic insights we've noticed coming out of COVID. And that's contributing definitely to what we saw in the previous slide, which is how, just events are growing more and more each year coming out of COVID. Then I'm going to pass it over to Simon, who's going to say that while there's a lot to celebrate, the industry still isn't without its challenges. Obviously, we have a cost of living crisis going on, and that has flow-on effects to how different sports are growing. So, the first exciting trend that we've noticed coming out of COVID is participants are getting younger. In 2021, 18% of participants were in their 20s. That didn't change that much in 2022, but now in 2024, 22% of participants are in their 20s. So that's a drastic change in just a 2-year period. At the same time, the median age of a participant has gone from 39 to 37. And so this boom in younger participation is something we should all be really excited about. And that's because it's helping the growth that we saw on the earlier slide that I presented. So between last year and this year, the average event on Let's Do This increased by 23%. However, that's in terms of participants on the start line. However, if it weren't for that younger demographic in their 20s, the average event would have only grown by 18%. So, this slide is telling us now these are small events with under 500 participants. These are large events over 1,000 participants, and this is medium-sized events somewhere in the middle. And what we can see here is that the share of younger participants has increased across the board. That means regardless of the size of your event, you can take advantage and be excited about this boom of more young people participating. So it's not just limited to those larger events that may have these big media budgets, but everyone can be excited about this boom of younger people participating more. And so obviously this trend in young people participating more has been noticed by publications as big as The Atlantic. They're saying that taking part in a marathon is the new quarter-life crisis. In addition to participating as a way to find meaning, young people are also getting offline and participating in these events as a way to spend time with their loved ones. In the Massive survey that we referenced before, 35% of participants identified social reasons as their primary motivation to attending an event. Now, another exciting trend we've noticed coming out of COVID is people are traveling more and more for events. This chart is relevant to the UK. The aqua bar shows the share of participants traveling over 100 miles to get to their event location. In 2021, and that's for events outside of London, I should say. In 2021, 4% of people traveled over 100 miles to get to their event. Now in 2024, 10% of people are traveling over 100 miles to get to their event. That is a massive increase. I should add that we're noticing an increase in the blue bar too. That's for events inside of London. However, it's just increasing at a slower rate. Now that chart is relevant to the UK. However, we're also noticing this trend in the US as well. Let's Do This is partnered with an awesome event in the US called Boulderthon. It's based in Boulder in Colorado. And between 2023 and 2024, they saw double the number of participants traveling outside the state of Colorado to go to the event. Now, I also want to mention that we are in very exciting talks, because we've noticed this trend ourselves, with a major hotel booking platform, and that partnership that we're in talks about is going to help more people travel to your events, so we can have more people to get to your start lines and take, the friction outside of the experience of booking an event far away. And it's important to mention that finally, obviously, we're seeing more and more people travel, but I also want to mention that obviously the local community is the most important. Again, this is small events, medium events, and large events. And you can see the blue and aqua bars are the people that travel within 100 miles to attend your event. And so while it's important to start thinking about marketing to those people who are further afield, it's also important to prioritize that local community in all your marketing activities. So I've just presented those two demographic trends, but I bet you're wondering how that differs between different sports and distances. So I'm going to hand it over to Simon now, who's going to talk about the different sports and different distances and the trends we're seeing there. Woo!
Thanks, Lucy. So we open with the fact that participation is up compared to 2019 and continuing to grow year over year, which is fantastic, but we know it's not equally felt in all parts of the industry. It definitely seems strongest in running, and the graph shows that the average 5K grew 40% between 2023 and 2024, but we can see that the trend is less so for longer events, and in fact for triathlon, it seems that the average event is actually shrinking a bit. And there's a couple of reasons that we've identified for this. First, the boom really seems to be a youth movement. And it seems that the youth movement is primarily seen in running. We can see that between 2022 and 2024, we went from an 18% share of participants in between 20 and 29 to 23%. Whereas when we look at triathlon, it was only about a 1.5% increase. And while in cycling we're also seeing growth, it remains that youth participation in mass organized cycling events is still very low at just about 10%. Second, you'll remember from the previous graph, there was a correlation between how long the event was and maybe a lack of growth that we're seeing. And the other correlation there is that those events are typically more expensive. As Lucy mentioned earlier, there's still a cost of living issue happening. People don't have as much disposable income as they may like to. And using data from the massive survey, when people responded that they'd done fewer events in 2023 than 2022, they were asked why that was. And the primary reason given, 41% of people, said it was just that they had less money to spend on events. So there's some other data points from the massive survey that back this up. 34% of people said that they consider events to be poor value for money, and in the same question, only 23% identified that they thought it was good value for money. When asked what they would change about events, 65% had making events cheaper towards the top of their wish list. And when people were asked whether they would rather go to a cheaper event or one that gives a much better experience, 40% said that they would choose cost over going to something they knew was going to be great. There is a lot of empathy from this survey of people know that events are getting costlier to run, but how can we make sure that we're catering to people as much as we can so that participants aren't missing out on events and that events aren't missing out on participants? And let's do this. We have a few things that we can do to help. So we've implemented payment plans, which means that for people who are wanting to have that massive experience, you can help them spread the cost if they do not have the cash on hand. You can offer dynamic pricing, so you can have things like early bird pricing to help price people in, things like community pricing and community places that was talked about in the panel earlier. And also, maybe the main thing that we can do as a room is make sure that we put on really diverse events so that everybody can get involved. Not every event has to be massive to be meaningful or memorable. And speaking of memorable events, so most of the people here, if you're an event organizer, have put on events. They've had hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people turn up to your event, and that's an incredibly hard thing to do, and it's something everyone should be very proud of. But how do you get them to come back year after year? We know it's easier said than done. And when we've looked at the numbers, we found that only about 25% of people who attend an event with an organizer come back to do one of that organizer's events the following year. And on an individual race level, its average is at under 10%. You can see on the graph on the left how this breaks down across different distances. There's a silver lining for triathlon race organizers compared to earlier. It's that they do have the most loyal fan base or participant base overall. So again, we think at Let's Do This, we have some things that can help with this. We have an analytics suite on the platform that means you can look at your demographic and participant registration trends in order to help you figure out when's a good time to launch or run marketing. We have a CRM builder that allows you to create great content in order to engage with those past participants, the most loyal fan base that you have. We also offer membership programs that helps you to foster a community, to give out loyalty discounts, priority entry, and this type of thing. So to recap, we're in a great place as an industry. Participation is rising. COVID is firmly in the rear-view mirror. This is primarily being driven by a young, social, and enthusiastic new generation of participants, which, if nurtured, should continue to blossom into a huge growth opportunity for the industry. The effect of run clubs and running on social media, as you can see from the panel before, it's already being seen in registration trends, and is something that is very exciting for us all. And we've also seen that people are willing to travel much longer distances and more often, looking for those landmark or destination events to have a year-defining experience, while also the grassroots support for local races remains strong. That said, we know it's not all smooth sailing. It's not without its challenges. There are bumps on the road. Participants continue to feel the strain of rising living costs. Most events are growing, but not all are growing equally. Not everybody is able to have such a share of the industry's wealth. And sometimes it can be difficult to get people who have invested in you to continue to invest and come back to your event year over year. However, with the combined knowledge of everyone in this room and with the tools provided by Let's Do This, we think we can build a society where everybody wants to get offline together. Thank you.